In this tutorial, we're going to walk you through how to do some of the editing in Adobe Lightroom Classic. At this point, you've already should have watched the video on how to get your photos from your phone or your camera to your Google Drive, and then Google Drive to the computer into the specific folder, and then also how to import that into Adobe Lightroom. Now that we have it in Adobe Lightroom, we're going to start to edit them. All right, so you can see I'm in my library. I've already imported my photo, and now I'm going to move on to my develop module. Here's the photo. This is my daughter. We were at Home Depot. She had some binoculars with her, and I thought it'd be funny if I shoved her into the bushes and made it look like she was on a safari. So I took this on my phone. I think it was like an iPhone X. So the quality is not the greatest, but it's not horrible either. So we're going to do what we can with it. So our goal here, and that's kind of one of the first things that you want to try to think about when you're editing, is like, what's our goal? What's the purpose? What are we trying to do? And so in this one, I wanted to make it look like she's kind of in a safari. So we're going to kind of darken it a little bit, try to make it look a little bit bluer, kind of colder looking in some spots, and try to make her pop a little bit more, make the background a little bit darker. We're also going to try to get rid of, we are going to get rid of some of this stuff here to make it look like she's less in a store and more in the jungle. And we'll just kind of go from there. So we're going to do a step-by-step, and it should be about 25 minutes maybe. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to crop this down. So let's back up for a second. So at the very top, we have this stuff here. So we have our library, develop, map, book, slideshow, print, and web. Okay, the only things we really ever are going to use are library, develop, and maybe sometimes print. All right, since this is your first time for most of you using Lightroom, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour. Well, it's bedtime. On our left here, we have a lot of presets. So you can see I have a couple of my own presets that I've made in the past, which is super helpful. So when I'm doing like senior portraits and some things like that, I actually have a few of my own presets that I've made over the years just because I know that they work, and they work pretty well. But there's also places where you can download presets, you can pay for presets, but then there's a lot of Adobe presets in here as well. So like adaptive portrait, all these different things. Sometimes they can be really helpful, and they can be useful to speed up your process. I use adaptive portrait a lot because it makes masks really, really quickly for using portraits. And we'll get into some of that stuff later on a different date. So we scroll down here. There's a couple other things that can be handy sometimes. Curves, grain, sharpening, vignette. At this point, most of the time, I do all this stuff on my own rather than using the presets. But they can be really helpful, especially when you're first starting out, because you can use one of them and then you can see on the side like what it does to your photo. If on this side, it'll actually show you the things that it's done to it to get to that point. So it can be really helpful sometimes to kind of reverse engineer how they're doing some stuff. Okay. On our right side, this is our histogram. This is essentially a graph that's showing you your darks to lights. My darks are on my left side, my rights on the right are my lights. Sometimes you'll see let's see if I move this around. See if I can make it go black. Oh, it doesn't want to do it. Sometimes every once in a while, like you'll get these weird blue lights, or you'll get these really weird red lights that kind of pop up. You can't figure out like why they're there or how to get rid of them. It's because your histogram stuff is turned on. So you can see on her forehead, it's really, really bright. And so it turns onto this really, really bright red thing. It's kind of just like a warning, that's a really, really bright spot. Okay. And then in here we have our edits. So this is kind of like our sliders. This is how we crop. This is our, is it going to pop up? No, it doesn't want to pop up. This is how we kind of get rid of things. So we can use AI, we can use stamps, we can use a couple other things. This is our masks. here, which we'll talk about. And this is how to get rid of like red eye, which isn't really that common anymore. But and then, so let's start kind of just going through it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to crop things down, figure out my composition. So I'm going to click on my crop, and you can see we have our tic-tac-toe board, right? Our rule of thirds. If you want to see a couple different options for our little grid layout, if you hit O, it'll show you some different things. Most of the time, I kind of just use my rule of thirds grid. Every once in a while, I'll mix it up and try some different stuff, but rule of thirds grid's a really good place to start. So one of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to try to crop some of this out just to kind of start. So I'm going to bring it down just a little bit, and I'm going to try to kind of just keep her in that section. And then I also can tell it's a little bit crooked, so I'm actually going to straighten it out off of her goggles. I don't know if they're actually straight or not, but I think it's an easy one to kind of straighten things out. So I'm going to go there. So there's a couple different ways to straighten things out. So you can see if I go to that corner, it turns into the little curved arrow. If I click on that, I'm going to see a whole new grid line. So I just pull that up and down, kind of rotate it around just like you would in a PowerPoint or Google Slides or anything like that. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to straighten it out there. Another way is to pull on my angle here, or I can also use this level. So if I click on this level, I pull that one way or another. If this was a straight line, I want that to be level, right? That's not what we're going for, but I can use that level and go here on her. And I'm going to go, I want this to be level. And then it does it based off of that. Okay, so let's pull that to what I'm happy with, level again. Let's kind of recrop it. Down a little bit. Kind of want some of these off on the side. So this is where I'm kind of figuring out my composition a little bit more too. I'm relatively happy with that. She's in that rule of thirds kind of area. Let's go a little bigger. Kind of get rid of a few things. We're getting a little stuff on both sides. Yeah, I'm cool with that. So I'm going to hit enter, or I can just hit close. Oh, and there we are. All right, so now we have our composition. So our next step is to start to kind of go through our sliders. So just like we did the other day on our phones in Adobe Lightroom, but now we're going to do it on the computer. So we're going to have, I'm going to kind of, I think exposure is fine how it is. I know by doing, just from experience, just by doing some of these other things, it's going to end up getting darker anyway. And so it's kind of, we'll come back to it if we need to, but I think we should be just fine. So I'm going to pull down, I'll bring my contrast up just a little bit because I want a little more contrast in there, a little bit darker. Let's go through our highlights. I think it's really bright, and so actually I'm going to bring my highlights down. And sometimes when you bring your highlights down, you actually get a little bit extra detail in some of the clothes and that stuff too. So I'm going to bring my highlights down. I think let's go around 30. That's a lot actually, but it seems like it's been doing okay. Actually I want to bring my shadows, make them a little bit darker too. So I'm actually going to bring those down as well. Let's do 25. We're going to do our whites. I'm going to bring those down quite a bit too. Pretty happy with that. And then our blacks as well. So I'm kind of just creating a little bit more contrast and that stuff all the way around. You can see this is starting to kind of pop and get kind of intense right now. We can come back and fix that in a little bit. So I'm going to fix that actually by going to saturation. So saturation, remember, if I bring it all the way to the left, it's going to be black and white. If I go to the right, it's going to be really intense colors. So I'm just going to bring my saturation down just like a smidge, not too much. I actually want to dial back those colors a little bit. And now we're actually going to jump into S curve, right? So my tone curve. So this is kind of everything. And then we have our blacks, reds, greens, blues. And so we're just going to kind of stay in with our blacks and whites right now. So just like we did on our phone, I'm going to create 3 dots right on these intersections. I'm going to pull my shadows down just a little bit. I'm going to bring my highlights up just a little bit. And then I'm actually, just like we did on our cars, I'm going to pull my blacks up a little bit just to kind of mat it out, and so it's not as black, black, black. I'm going to go on this side and pull these down just a smidge. Nothing crazy. Okay, so I feel pretty good about that. Like I said, it's still kind of intense. We're actually going to pull those colors back a little bit in our mixers. All right, so let's go down. Pull my whites down a little bit more again. Cool. All right, so we're going to scroll down. Now we're going to go into our mixers. So this is where a lot of stuff is going to happen here. Let's bring, I'm going to bring my reds are pretty good. I think they're fine where they are. Oranges, yellows. I'm going to bring my yellows down a little bit to get them a little orangier. So we can, I want her jacket to pop a little bit more, kind of be more of like a brownish color. We can see by dragging that around, that's going to adjust that. So she's kind of in that orange range. We're going to keep her there. I'm going to actually, I want my, so when we think of like cool colors and warm colors, cool, I kind of want my leaves to feel a little cooler looking. So I'm going to pull my greens a little bit more to the blue. Just a smidge. You can see that also is affecting her glasses a little bit too, her binoculars. It's fine. It's kind of crazy. You can see like in her, right, as I adjust this, it's kind of crazy what you can do with some of the colors. So this is actually a way that you can like change people's jackets and change the color of their clothes and some other stuff too, depending on what you got. So let's leave that there. And then I'm going to come down a little bit more. I'm going to bring the saturation of the reds down a little bit. So like her hands are kind of pinkish. This thing's kind of popping off. So I'm going to actually bring that down just a smidge. So it's not as intense. I'm actually going to bring her oranges. It's not bad. It's not too bad there. I'm going to bring those blues down just a smidge too, so they're not as intense. And then luminance. So luminance is like the, if we brought blacks, I'm sorry, if we brought mixed like color, like black and white in with our colors. So if I bring my luminance down a little bit on my red, you can see that's going to make her hands darker or lighter that way too. So I'm actually bringing it down just a smidge. Let's go there. Let me check out our yellows. It's not too bad there. And so far, like, if you're just looking at this, you're like, oh, did you even do anything yet? Like, I don't know. So that's before and after. So you can already see, like, we did make a difference. So I can see if I'm bringing my oranges down too much, I'm starting to get this kind of like strange like glow on her forehead. So we're going to kind of dial that back just a little bit. All right, so that's pretty good there. All right, so let's go up. So I'm pretty cool with my color correction there. And you can turn the stuff on and off, just each individual thing too. So that's the color correction. You can see how that changed that. Right, here's our tone curve. If I click on the eyeball, you can see how that stuff changes. Right, and so that's basic. So that's those first couple things that we did too. So you can see it does make a difference and stuff. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go up into masks. This is where a lot of really cool stuff can happen. So we're going to go into, actually I'm going to dial my greens back a little bit too. I'm going to desaturate them. Yeah, that's better. So I don't want it to be too crazy. Okay, I'm pretty cool with that. All right, so we're going to go into making some masks. There's lots of different things that you can do with masks. And one of the things, especially working with people, I think it can be really helpful, is if I click on this, we say we have all these different masks that we can do. And we're going to kind of go through them a little bit one by one. But the first one I want to do is I want to actually go to people. So you can see, boom, right away, I don't have to do much. All I have to do is click on people and it makes a mask around her. It's pretty cool actually, because I can go facial skin, body skin. So like for facial skin, if I wanted to like soften her skin up, I could really easily do that. Face skin, eyebrows, lips, hair, clothes, right? So if I wanted to make her clothes change, like pop off a little bit differently, that's a really easy way to do that too. But I'm actually going to do kind of like a weird little trick. I'm actually going to do entire person. I'm going to create mask. What I actually want to do is actually edit all the stuff in the background and not her. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to go to invert mask. So I clicked on these three little dots. I'm going to invert my mask. So now it's actually going to select everything in the background. If I click on show overlay, it'll actually show me in red what's going to be affected. So now I'm actually going to bring that exposure down a little bit. I can't actually do like a color mixer on masks, but what I can do is I can actually adjust my temperature. So I can actually bring my temperature down a little bit, so that way it's more of like a blue color. And that's kind of what I'm going for, is to make it a little bit more of like a jungly cold vibe to it. So I'm pretty cool with that. Let's turn that show overview off. I brought my exposure down, and actually I'm pretty happy with that. All right, now she's kind of glowing a little too much, so actually I might bring that back up a little bit and maybe bring my exposure here down just a smidge. Okay, cool. Let's see. Let's get from here to here. Before, after. Before, after. It still feels a little bright in some spots, especially like up top. And I might kind of adjust these a little bit as well. So one thing we can do actually to adjust that top is I'm going to make another mask. This time we're going to do a vignette. So I can go down here. If I scroll all the way down to effects, I can actually add a vignette this way by bringing this in. And that actually works pretty well. I'm actually, for this one, I'm fine with that. I'll just bring my vignette down here, and that kind of darkens some of that stuff up. I'm pretty cool with that. All right, so then one of the last things we're going to do is get rid of this stuff. I'm going to show you two different ways you could do it. The first one is using our Band-Aid. Actually, we'll use the eraser tool. So this is kind of a newer thing. It says generative AI. It's actually pretty cool, but it's a little slow. And so what I can do is I can actually just use my like almost like a paintbrush over the things I want to get rid of. I hit apply, and then I'll do generating, and I'll use AI to get rid of that stuff. You can see it did a pretty good job. It looked around the screen and said, oh, you know, this stuff that looks pretty similar, so I'm just going to make that based off of what's there. In this situation, I'm not super happy with that, so I'm actually going to get rid of it, and I'm going to use a Band-Aid instead. So I'm going to take my Band-Aid, I'm going to paint over what I want to get rid of. The thing that's cool about the Band-Aid, you can see all of a sudden there's this second thing that's going on here. What that's doing is it's taking information from up here and it's kind of blending it in with information from down there to make it pretty happy. So you can see there, cool. I'm pretty happy with that. And this is way faster than using the AI stuff. So that's good. And you notice I'm doing little sections at a time instead of big sections, because that's way easier to work with. Pretty happy with that. Pretty happy with that. Let's do that there. And you see it pulled from over on this glove. I'm like, let's Let's pull somewhere that's a little closer. And as I move it around, you can see it kind of blends and does different things. Cool. So now, right, there's that little spot right there. I don't love it. And so it's going to be too close to the sleeve to get rid of. And so this is actually where I'll use my AI stuff. So I'm going to go into my eraser again. I'm going to go to the eraser tool, generative AI, and this is actually where I'm going to paint over that spot. Now I'm going to hit apply. It'll use AI, it'll balance out between those things, and it gets rid of it. And it does a really good job with it, which is pretty cool. So once again, we'll do our before and after. Before, after, before, after. So I'm pretty happy with that. I don't really see too much more. I mean, there's a few things up here if we really wanted to get nitpicky about it. I'm not too stressed out about it. The last thing I want to do is actually I'm going to make her eyes, like the inside of these, a little bit darker so they don't look like she's in a store, because I can see all the reflections of the lights and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to kind of zoom in. So I'm going to go to at the top left, this is my navigator. So I see fit 100% and 66.7%. If I go to 100%, it got pretty close. But if I go down here and I can change that to, let's try 200%, right? And now I'm much closer. And I can actually see on my navigator what this box is. So I can move that box around, and what's inside of that box is what's on my screen. So let's actually go a little bit closer. Now we're at 300. That works pretty well. So we're going to go to our mask. I'm going to create a new mask, and I'm going to do what's called a radial gradient. So I'm going to go to the center of this, and I'm going to pull it out. If I hold down Shift, it'll be a perfect circle. If I let go of Shift, you can see it makes ovals instead. But these are pretty much perfect circles. So you notice there's actually two circles that are happening here. And let's turn on our show overview. So what's happening is that the inside of that circle is 100% being affected, and then outside of this second circle is 0%. And it's a gradient, or an ombre, if you want to go call it that. So from here, 100 to 0. So if I adjust that, you can kind of see that, right? So it's kind of fades it out. If I pull this out farther, now it goes from 100% to 0 really quickly, because these are kind of hard edged pieces. So now if I bring that down, maybe I get rid of my whites a little bit more, my blacks down. Let's go my highlights a little bit. So that's not too bad. I don't hate that. And then maybe I can use a mask or something like that to get rid of the rest of it. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go on here. If I click on it, it actually has kind of like a sub little menu. And it says, ooh, radial gradient. I'm actually going to duplicate that. Duplicate radial gradient 1. And now I have 2 of them. So that way I'm not having to reinvent it, redo it over and over again. I can just bring this over. And so you notice I didn't copy the mask 2. I actually copied this. The reason why I didn't copy, if I copied the mask, I would have to do 2 totally separate adjustments. But here I only have to do, because they're both in the same mask, as I adjust it, it adjusts both of them at the same time. So I'm pretty cool with that. Let's see what it looks like. Let's turn that off. It's a little dark for my taste. So let's do that again. Let's bring it up a little bit. It's not too bad. Maybe we'll adjust the colors a little bit so it kind of matches. And then, like I said, we can go in with our, get in real close. If I hit Command plus and minus, I can also zoom in and out that way. So I'm just going to do a really quick Band-Aid tool and go over that stuff. pull that from here. That's fine. Move that around so you have like something. And if there's a little reflection looking, that's okay. That's not a huge deal. All right, let's go back. Cool. So that works pretty well. All right. Before, after, before, after. I'm hitting backslash to do the before and after. So the little downward line underneath the delete key. So that's your backslash, before, after. Another way we can actually look at it is if we are in our basic editing tools, if I go down here, I don't know why it doesn't want to show me my stuff today. I can look at it by doing YY, which will show me before and after on a side-by-side view, which is kind of cool too. All right. So we're cool. We're done. We're pretty happy with it. And I'm going to, in the next video, I'm going to show you actually how to export it. I'm going to do it in a totally separate video because there's going to be times you're like, oh, how do I remember? Like, I don't remember how to export or how to put it back on, how to save it. Oh, speaking of that, let's talk about that really quick. If I just turn this off right now, it's fine. It saves automatically, right? So I just closed it. Oh, it's going to say this all the time to you. You can skip this time or you can back it up. I'm just going to back it up. It takes a couple seconds. There you go. Right? All I did was close it. I didn't save anything right away. But now when I open it back up, it's there, right? It just kind of saves automatically. It's still not a functional photo yet, or a functional image, because right now we basically just kind of made a really, really elaborate filter for our photo. It's not an actual like image or photo or any of that kind of stuff until we export it. And so that, like I said, that'll be in the next video. That'll show you how to export stuff, and so that way you can just watch the export video if you need a little export refresher. All right. Thanks for watching.